Folks, welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here from the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University. I'm glad you joined us. Dr. Matt Miesner is going to be joining us today to talk about copper toxicity in sheep, cattle, and other species. It's bound to be a great show. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned after this break.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, Progress, powered by Kansas farmers. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Matt, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Folks, Dr. Matt Miesner. He is boarded in internal medicine for food and fiber animals. He is the section head of the agricultural practices section here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, where he is an associate clinical professor. And when we get to talking about things out there in the pastures and up and down the Flint Hills and different areas of the world, copper's a pretty important element that can be both a nutrient and a toxin.
Right. Yeah, it's copper becomes one of those things where we see problems with either too little or too much. And I think today we talk a little bit about the way it comes about being too much. And every year we'll have situations where it rise up where we'll have a bunch of animals that develop copper toxicity. And usually it shows up with sheep. And oftentimes when I see it, it turns out to be a fair number of pretty valuable, show sheep and other individuals that come about with copper problems. And it's when we talk about it, I think we can talk about the toxicity portion. It seems to be sheep almost exclusively. I mean, other species are susceptible to it, but sheep are unique in that they take it up pretty well, and then they bind it and they can't get rid of it. And so sheep seem to be the species we think about most commonly that develop copper toxicity.
Right. I mean, cattle do get copper toxicity in other species, but, sheep are like 10 times more sensitive to copper than cattle from kind of ballpark figures.
Sure. Yeah, and even when we think about other small ruminant species, goats, they're closer to the cattle and they're kind of in between there. But we see it where probably the two most common reasons that we see copper toxicity develop in sheep would be either mismanaged feed mixes, or sometimes it's just contaminants in the mixers that get it's enough to do something like that to allow them to get too much copper absorbed and then bound. And it could be feeding other species feed. We just said cattle are less sensitive, but they have more copper in their feed, and that might not be kosher with the sheep.
Especially pigs.
Yeah,
pigs. It's actually growth promoting. Copper can be, and so the levels we run on pig feeds are, so somebody that has show lambs and show hogs, same barn, mixing up feed, could really cause some trouble. That's
not even taking into consideration some of the plants that might be in a pasture that have a little additive. When you talk about this whole consumption thing, it's an all an additive type of a setup that we get into.
So kind of talk to me a little bit. We got about a minute here before break, but talk to me a little bit about the development of the disease.
So what happens most commonly, so there's two ways. I mean, they can either just consume a ton of it all at once, but more commonly I think what happens is they absorb it and it just keeps getting stored in the liver over a period of time. And so they store it, they bind it well, they're not excreting it that well, and this can go over for months to years, and before you even see a problem. And then usually what happens is some sort of a stressor. I think that sheep can be really stressed pretty easily, probably, but environment, handling, processing, any of those things can set that up, and now all this bound up copper in their liver just released all of a sudden, and just massive amounts in the bloodstream, and then causes acute copper toxicity to the body.
Perfect. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the clinical signs of copper toxicity. You're watching DocTalk.
Biodiesel made from sustainable resources is diversifying our fuel supply. This year, biodiesel will displace over 1 billion gallons of fossil fuel nationwide. It's making our economy stronger and our communities healthier. It's working here and across America. Get biodiesel going in your community. Visit americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
Broadband has become as important to us as highways. That is why DocTalk is teaming up with NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association, and rural broadband companies like Blue Valley Telecommunications in fighting for quality broadband access through the program Smart Rural Communities.
I don't think we have any idea what's coming in the future. I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago what we're doing today. So in 2 years, I would guess there's things we can't imagine that we're going to be doing.
To learn more, visit ntca.org/smart or bluevalley.net.
DocTalk, brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook, or visit us online at sftmeats.com.
Folks, welcome back to Doc Talk. I'm here with Dr. Matt Miesner, who is the section head of agricultural practices here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, where he is an associate clinical professor and he is a boarded internal medicine specialist for food and fiber animals. And Matt, it's always great to have you on the show. It's always great to pick your brain on these types of things. But copper toxicity, you know, we led right up the break, but we have that stressful situation, animal liver dumps the copper into the body, and now things are going to start happening. What are we going to see first?
Honestly, sometimes the first thing you see are dead animals. You know, so a client goes out and it may be one, it may be two, it may be multiple, and it may be just so fast, so rapid that you have dead animals in your pasture or in your barn or wherever they're kept. Others, you know, what this is causing is it's just pretty much destroying all their red blood cells. Okay, so I mean they're just all popping, so they're becoming severely anemic. They look weak, they look depressed. Some of them, to some point in time, they're breathing heavy, and since this is damaging all these red blood cells, the color, the pigment of that's coming through in the urine in some of these. So some of them would be urinating red, or we call it a port wine type of a urination, which is pretty severe. And this pigment in the blood cells, there's actually toxic to tissues too. So they're in kidney failure, they're in liver failure, they're having some major systemic disease that's pretty rapid.
So that's pretty obvious when you walk out, you got some dead animals, and then you start to see these clinical signs.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and it's rapid, and oftentimes we try to treat these at this point. We'll talk about that in a bit, but once we see in clinical signs, it's pretty hard to get them back. And so we start trying to really get a good diagnosis if we can. There's plenty of things that will cause acute death, but copper and especially sheep, we look at them. You may go out and they're pretty severe. Some of them look really yellow, so they're really icteric, so you can recognize that pretty rapidly. And at that point, that's the time to start trying to get a definitive diagnosis, meaning we can pull blood. It can be some transit. We're going to start trying to measure copper levels. That one's not the best. These dead animals, it's always good to try to do a post-mortem exam on anything that dies acutely in any situation to try to figure out what it was.
Get a veterinarian out there, have
Yes.
them do a post-mortem. What kind of samples are we going to take?
Particularly the best ones would be liver and kidney. Oftentimes your veterinarian, when they open them up, will recognize the problems. This is one that we call, the kidneys have a pretty characteristic appearance. I think they call it a gunmetal gray type kidney, and they're hemolysis
Right.
through it. They look really yellow. So your veterinarian will be pretty suspicious right off the bat. They're going to get some samples of liver, and they're going to get some samples of kidney, and they're going to send that off to the lab. And at that point, it's also a good time to get you a feed sample, try to figure out where your sources are for this problem.
Well, so when you get them, veterinarians send them to the D-Lab, we'll get a diagnosis, and then we'll take a break now for a commercial. When we come back, it'll be time to treat them.
Great.
Thanks for being here, folks. Thanks for being at Doc Talk. More with Dr. Matt Miesner on copper toxicity after this break.
This Meet the Future Veterinarian is brought to you by Zuprevo. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ashley Zondlak grew up working on her neighbor's dairy operation, and at 16, it became her full-time job. Over the years, she has shown cattle at local fairs, volunteered at Breakfast on the Farm events, and during vet school, she worked in Michigan State University's mastitis lab. After graduation, Ashley's goal is to work as a food animal practitioner.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help?
How can we help?
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
I'm Dr. Frank Lyons, a physician here at Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. As one of the only standalone stem cell centers in the U.S., we use your stem cells as therapy for arthritis and some autoimmune diseases.
I'm Dr. Andrew Pope, here at Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center. Utilizing the latest technology under strict protocols, we're able to harvest your stem cells from your own fat to treat a variety of medical conditions. The best part about it is, it's a same-day surgical procedure and requires no general anesthesia.
When your living depends on agriculture, you can depend on KFRM 550 AM. If you're in the southwest three-fourths of Kansas or the northern half of Oklahoma, catch us at 550 AM on the radio dial. But if that isn't you, listen on your cell phone at TuneIn Radio or on your computer at KFRM.com. We promise to keep you informed, entertained, and company as you go through your day. KFRM 550 AM, the voice of the plains. We would like to join your management team.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
DocTalk, brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Matt Miesner. Dr. Miesner is the section head of agricultural practices here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. He is also an associate clinical professor and is boarded in internal medicine for food and fiber animals, and sees a lot of cases here, referral cases, sees some of our local cases, but copper toxicity is one of those that we do see. Those are cases that are out in the field that specifically with sheep. And so you've gotten us to the point where the sheep have built up the problem. Now we've had the clinical signs and some dead sheep, and we've sent the livers and kidneys in, got a definitive diagnosis, and now we're going to go out and treat some of these animals. What are we going to try to do on the treatment?
Right. I think that, a lot of times, like I said in the beginning, we'll have some pretty valuable individuals. This can be pretty devastating to, a commercial producer, but then a lot of times we'll get some of these pretty high-end show sheep and whatnot. So some of these, even though it's a long shot, some of these really acute cases that we're seeing, we're going to try to treat those. And we'll try some fluids, and we'll try some other drugs to try to bind up some of this copper acutely support. We're trying to keep it as low stress as possible. I've even done blood transfusions in some of these sheep that were valuable enough. And it's not that it's that expensive. But we can get pretty intense on the critical care and recognizing some of these. But like I say, the individual is hard to treat and hard to get back. And so what we're going to really do is we're going to start jumping on the rest of the herd or the remainder of those animals that are still in the barn or the pasture or whatnot that need to be treated. And the drugs we're going to use, and your veterinarian would use, would be things that help bind copper, prevent the copper from being absorbed, bind it in the liver and help get it out, help them pee it out. And there's various drugs and chemicals that we'll use for those. Have some pretty long names and have to be used daily, or twice daily, and so you have to be careful with some of your stressors that you're putting on the animal just to get them treated. But we're going to try to we know we've got a problem, we know we have a few individuals that are having issues, and so we're going to now try to bind it and get it out of the remainder of those animals in the herd.
So when I'm looking at them, and of course we always want you to work with your local practitioner, but let's say I walk out there and I've got, looks like I've got some to triage, I've got some that are probably, they've been eating the same feed, but they aren't showing the clinical signs. Do you treat them all?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, you know that they're at risk. You know that you've got some, and what we might see clinical problems a year later, because this stuff binds up and
it's building.
And so it's stored. You never know when it's going to be released, but if you have individuals, you've got others exposed.
Okay, and when we start to when you're starting to relieve this from them, how often or how expensive is this treatment?
Actually, some of the drugs are pretty expensive. Okay, but there are some sources, and talk with your veterinarian, they can call us. We have some sources where we can get reasonably priced other medications that can be given daily. There's some sources for these kind of drugs and chemicals that we can use to bind it. So it's not completely cost prohibitive for a lot of those things.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break, and I think the next segment will be the most important, is let's prevent it and keep it from happening within your herd. Thanks for watching Doc Talk. More after these messages.
The BQA Tip of the Day, sponsored by Beringer Engelheim Vetmedica, Inc.
As we look at one of the main components of beef quality assurance, it's the care and handling of livestock, in particular beef cattle in our case. So if we look at how we talk about that, we talk about nutrition, protection from the elements. One of the main components of that is how we handle and process cattle. The stockmanship is a key component of that. Everybody can get their cattle processed, but if we do it in a manner that the cattle are allowed to learn and actually think their way through the processing areas, it's less stressful on them, it's safer on the people handling the cattle as well. So from a stockmanship standpoint, we really try to get producers to understand how a cow thinks, how they perceive our actions around them, and how to use those two things, their flight zone, point of balance, and other aspects of behavior, to get them to do what we need them to do without stressing the cattle.
I will take action against herbicide-resistant weeds. I will know my weeds, and I will stop them before they go to seed. I will do whatever it takes to give my crops the upper hand, and I will use multiple herbicide sites of action because every action counts. I will take action, this time for all time.
Healthy cows start with the new hired hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher. Get the new hired hand for yourself or become a distributor. Visit cowsprayer.com. The new hired hand makes healthy cows easy.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Working your cattle just got easier. Introducing the new VetGun delivery system. a new way to apply topical insecticides to your cattle. The Vet Gun lets you remotely treat cattle with effective parasite control, so you can do it just walking among the herd. It's that simple. The proven topical insecticide AML Vet Cap is used with the Vet Gun. It works fast to control horn flies and lice while minimizing stress on your cattle. Fast, easy, effective. Vet Gun. Check with your animal health supplier for availability.
Buying a car shouldn't be this hard. And at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego, it isn't. It's actually awesome. Whether you want a new or used car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. Even if you want to custom order a new car or truck, Toby's team can make the deal. See Toby's team at Brown Chevrolet Buick in Wamego. We're awesome.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or for more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thompson and Dr. Matt Miesner. And Dr. Miesner is a boarded internal medicine specialist and associate clinical professor here in the Ag Practices section of Kansas State's Veterinary Health Center, where he serves as the section head. And we're talking about copper toxicity. And Matt, when we talk about, we've talked about how they get it, clinical signs, treatment, but preventing it's key.
Sure. Yeah, and so, once we've got a diagnosis, or you've had it on the place, you're going to be certainly trying to prevent it. But even if you haven't had trouble, if you've got sheep, you should try to be proactive in preventing it. One of the things on the prevention side is it's not just total copper load. I mean, there's some antagonist things that could be misbalanced in the feed as well. So you're going to look at your overall feed mixture. You're going to consult nutritionists. You're going to look at things like, for example, molybdenum and sulfur. Those kind of things help prevent some of that copper going. So that might be a situation where if you get new batches of feed, you keep them and you store them. Just so that you have it for a backup, or you go ahead and test them and see what the components of that feed are. So preventing copper from being absorbed too much in the sheep would be one thing. But nutritionists, your veterinarian, can help you balance those and look at that balance and make sure they're safe. Then we just talked about other sources. So, there's some non-traditional ways of deworming where people use some copper oxide type or copper needles, so they're kind of slow release copper. Foot baths, there's some copper sulfate, I mean, you may be using things that I'm trying to prevent disease spread or foot care and those kind of things. And that, if they drink that, it's straight copper. Like I say, some plants, some other things. Anytime we see this whole overall balance of issues, we try to limit those sources and limit the amount of copper that gets absorbed in the animal.
I think that the getting the feed samples, storing those back, keeping those in a freezer so that whenever you do need to have something analyzed. But I go ahead, if these are valuable animals, and I don't know any animals today that are producing protein or wool that aren't valuable.
Right. Yeah.
I'd be sending those samples in and getting a good copper, get a good chemical analysis of my feed that I'm offering these animals anyway.
Right. Yeah, and like I say, what was planned on going into that mixture might have been okay, but we talked about there's sometimes some contaminated mixing equipment. There's other portions or parts of that feed that go in that sometimes just naturally contaminated with copper. And so each one's going to be a little bit different. So it's always good to just have a sample, test it beforehand. Storing is fine because you may not see problems until 18 months later. So, it's a long time.
And most every co-op will send the samples.
Sure.
In.
Yeah, and then looking at that overall balance, and it's never a malicious thing, makes it just an accident oftentimes.
You bet. Well, thanks for being here today.
Got to be here.
Thanks for watching DocTalk. Remember, always work with your local veterinarian. And if you want to know more about what Dr. Miesner and I do here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, you can find us on the web at www.vet.ksu.edu. Thanks for watching DocTalk today. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission,
The Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.